Please be seated. Welcome back to our March meeting, and isn't it wonderful? I must say, for me, I'm actually getting to chair during my period, some council meeting in this chamber. A couple of practical issues to highlight as usual. We have no fire drill planned, so if there is a fire alarm, please make your way out of the building in a calm and orderly manner. You will be guided by officers. Anybody with mobility issues should gather in the foyer on the left-hand side as you leave the chamber. You go near to the balustrade and assistance will be provided. Toilets are at the far end of the corridors, either side, so we go out. Ladies to the left, gents to the right. There have been a number of apologies received. COVID has dealt its usual cruel and random hand, so that quite a few councillors haven't been able to come out and been allowed out. And so far I've received apologies from Councillors Project Colton, Councillor Davis, Everett, Councillor Erin Fulton McAllister, Councillor Matthew Fulton McAllister, Councillor Jones, Councillor Manning, Councillor Oliver, Councillor Sue Sands and Councillor Vaughan Thomas. So I do wish them good health as soon as possible, and I hope they don't come to any harm. Lord Mayor's announcements. I've had a little bit of a better civic experience since the last council meeting. Omicron seems to be resolving one way or another, and so I've done some really nice things. I guess I'd like to quickly mention two. One was this morning when I had a virtual meeting with a Norwich self-advocacy group of people with different disabilities called Opening Doors. They quizzed me strongly, and I've got a whole list of things that I'll be sending out to various cabinet members saying they've raised this problem, they've raised that problem. But it was a really good and interesting, useful meeting. I'll also mention briefly that on Friday I went to the Henderson Green School, Henderson Green Primary School, and had the fantastic pleasure of opening some new play equipment. So they've repurposed the play area, and they're also building an outdoor classroom. So these all leveled at Key Stage 2. Once again, children were great, absolutely joys, everyone on their faces were wonderful. And afterwards I was quizzed by 4 of the students. And I tell you, the thoughtfulness in which they had put those questions and asked, and the emotional intelligence they displayed in their supplementaries was very impressive. So I'm hoping we've got a few future councillors. I've certainly told them that they should stand. Talking of stand, it also happens that sometimes councillors stand down. We've got 3 councillors standing down in the elections in May this year. Councillors Manning, Maxwell and yourself. I would like to invite the group spokesperson to acknowledge the contribution of these retiring members. Could I ask Councillor Waters to say, a few remarks?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. If I can turn to Councillor Youssef, first of all, and thank her for the work that she did in putting together the Black Lives Matter motion. I know she has a question to me on the progress of that motion later on, but I thought that was a very valuable piece of work that you did, and you should be rightly proud of bringing it in your name to this council, and I wish you all the very best. After you leave the council, I hope you found it a useful and rewarding experience. Councillor Patrick Manning served 2 terms. He's been an excellent ward councillor. He is someone I believe that all councillors pay close attention to when he makes comments, contributes to debates. His incisive questions, perhaps the product of his legal training in scrutiny, are first rate. I would have wished that he had had the opportunity to progress further in the council, but very significant work commitments and family commitments prevented him from doing this. But it's been a very good contribution to the work of the council, and we will miss him, and his constituents will as well. Lord Mayor, I'm going to ask my colleague, Councillor Gail Harris, to speak about Councillor Marion Maxwell, who has had a distinguished record of service on this council.
Of course. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Waters. So firstly, I would like to echo the thanks that Councillor Waters has expressed to Nanette, Patrick and Marion, the 3 councillors leaving Norwich City Council in May. They've worked hard for their communities, and we and the residents that they've represented must wholeheartedly thank them for that. On this occasion, I wish to speak more fully on one of the outgoing councillors, Councillor Marion Maxwell, somebody that I've known for a number of years. What a pedigree Marion has. A member of the Labour Party for over 40 years and a councillor representing Crome Water since a by-election in December 2012. A true socialist and a friend. Marion is a valued member of our group and was elected as Lord Mayor in the civic year 2016-17. Councillor Mike Stannard, Alan Pawsey and I were her designated consults for the year. This was pre-COVID, so as well as the serious business of raising money for her civic charity, It's on the Ball, we attended many events. I think that we can all say that as well as working hard, we most certainly had fun. I know that Marion considered it to be an honour to serve as the Lord Mayor of Norwich, and she most certainly did us proud. I know that deciding not to stand for re-election this year was a difficult decision for Marion. Marion is always willing to help the residents that she represents, the citizens of Norwich, and indeed any of us in this chamber. However, rather than worrying about everybody else, this has to be the time to put herself first and have the time to enjoy herself. Time to travel, not to worry about reading committee papers and meeting times. However, Rosie the cat Marion adopted after the sad death of one of our former councillors, Chris Harries, may not be quite as enamoured with the idea of Marion taking too many trips away from home. Rosie most certainly has the upper hand in the household, although Marion might try to pretend otherwise. So Marion, I'm sure that everybody in this chamber will wish you well. I feel privileged to have canvassed and leafleted with you across much of the city in the last years that we've known each other, to have worked with you within the council and for you to have been my cabinet support member. But most of all, I feel lucky to have you as my friend. If I could raise a glass tonight, I would, but trust me, we will be doing that at every opportunity before and after May. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. I now call upon Councillor Schmierer to say a few remarks.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor, and obviously I'd like to start by echoing the words that Councillor Waters and Councillor Harris have already said about Councillors Manning, Maxwell and Youssef. For my part, I'd like to start by talking about Patrick Manning. He has been a kind and compassionate councillor who has served the people of Lakenham with distinction for many years. When he has spoken in this chamber and in committee meetings, they've always been words which show a clear understanding of the issues at hand, and they will be missed. Turning to Marion, she's been an inspiration. She was a mentor to me, informing me about the role of the Lord Mayor and what that entailed, and most importantly, what the best events to attend and which ones to avoid were. My first meeting with Marion was when she apologised that she had to cover her ears when I gave my first speech in this chamber. She did say that this wasn't because of my appalling rhetoric, but instead because of her sensitive hearing. I hope I have adjusted the decibel levels accordingly tonight. I was delighted that you were able to second my appointment as Lord Mayor, and it is a real privilege to be able to repay the favour tonight and say some words about you and your time as a councillor. Marion has served as a councillor for Crome Ward in the north of the city for 8 years since 2014, and as we've heard, as Lord Mayor from 2016 to 2017. Her contributions to the Mountain Heath Conservators, to the Museums Committee, as well as in this chamber and other committees such as licensing, means her legacy working for the people of Norwich has not gone unnoticed. As I said, she was a mentor to me. She has also been a friend and a very kind neighbour, often inviting me in for coffee on a balcony during election period. Maybe this was a cunning way to stop my door knocking, but I think it's more a testimony to her kindness and generosity. I really enjoyed our chats, Marion, and look forward to resuming them during this year's election campaign as well, and thereafter. Both councillors, Maxwell and Manning, have shown that politics doesn't have to be adversarial. Indeed, in a world where words such as compromise and consensus are sadly often equated with treachery, it is refreshing that both these councillors have allowed cross-party work to thrive, and I'm deeply grateful for that. Turning now to Nanette Youssef. Her political journey began in earnest during her time studying at the University of East Anglia. It seems to be a sort of good finishing school or breeding ground for political debate, dialogue and idealism. And that is certainly true of Nanette. She has been a hard-working and active councillor representing the people of Nelson since 2019. When I asked her earlier about what her main recollection of being a councillor would be, she mentioned the sheer number of licensing and meetings and subcommittee meetings. And indeed, I wonder if there is a single taxi driver who's been caught speeding who hasn't come in front of Nanette at one of these meetings in those years. In seriousness, though, being a councillor is a challenging role that requires a considerable amount of work for very little remuneration. It is for people who care about their communities and for people who would work for local residents with or without the title councillor in front of their names. Nanette and the other councillors standing down have all shown this commitment. Returning specifically to Nanette, over those years since she's been elected, it has been incredibly important and rewarding that this council has had a strong voice, pushing for issues in particular on racial justice. No more so than in the wake of the killing of George Floyd on the 25th of May 2020 in Minneapolis. Nanette has pushed this council to take more action to tackle systemic racism in this city, proposals that were of course unanimously supported, and her work will go on, no doubt. Her voice on this matter in the chamber will be sorely missed, and we wish you all the best with your work as a policy officer for the Runnymede Trust in the future. And so it is a real pleasure to thank the three outgoing councillors and express our best wishes for their future endeavours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smeera, and I call upon Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'd like to begin by associating myself with the words from all the councillors who've spoken so far. I'll begin by just saying a few words about Councillor Youssef. As a resident of Nelson, I can I can attest to the how active she's been as a ward councillor in terms of leaflets coming through my letterbox and other things. So thank you on behalf of the residents of Nelson for that. I'm aware by speaking with colleagues on the licensing committee to sort of back up the comment that Councillor Schmirer made about just how active you've been on licensing and what a really important part you've played there. As we've already heard, and as I can speak to first hand, Councillor Manning has been absolutely superb in his forensic endeavours when it comes to a scrutiny committee. A question doesn't go asked unless he knows the answer already, and he only speaks when speaking is going to make a real difference to the outcome of the meeting. Sometimes I think over the number of years that I've chaired scrutiny, that would be and should be a trait that is adopted by more members for speedier meetings. Times, I think. I was looking back only the other day. There's a photo of us at Pride, and I remember what a brilliant day that was, and all the other events that I ended up tagging along to during that year. So thank you very much for that, and I know you had a great time, and the city was incredibly well represented by you as your year as Lord Mayor. And as a new chair of scrutiny, you were there as my vice chair, offering me helpful advice in my left ear as I attempted to keep order for the first time. So once again, thank you very much, and I wish you very much all the best for the future, and same to all the other councillors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wright. I'm now going to call on the two councillors present to come to the front and present them with their city badges, and I think we can show our appreciation, can't we?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
While the Lord Mayor's sitting down, can I thank everybody in the room, and especially people in Democratic Services who have had a few difficult things to do for me, especially Lucy, who I left my badge to get in on the boat when it was on its way to the Gibraltar. So she got me another one. But no, they worked really hard, the people here that look after us, and I've been very grateful to all of you. And the hearing's all right now, thank you. And all my colleagues, because I think we've all worked together, and that's what we should be doing. And I have to say that Democratic Services dealt really well when I told them that I was going to have it's on the ball as my charity. Not as well as I did when I realised that I had to announce it in front of all the men that were sitting in front of me when I was made Lord Mayor. And it was a bit embarrassing. But we did raise 24,000, and I've heard that we saved 11 lives. But thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure, and I'm going to cry now.
Thank you. Back to the business. I'm going to call upon Councillor Waters to announce nominations for the Lord Mayor and Sheriff for the upcoming civic year. Councillor Waters.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So the new civic team for the forthcoming civic year is the same as the civic team for this civic year. Very pleased that is the case. We've had very good service from the current Lord Mayor and the Sheriff, Caroline Gerald. I think what has been in our minds, of course, has been the interruption of our business, and certainly the traditional role of the Lord Mayor and Sheriff as a result of COVID. So it is my profound wish that they managed to get effectively one half of the civic year, and that they should, in the ensuing civic year, get the second half to round off the very good work they have done in this year. So I so move.
I'll ask group spokesperson to speak on this next. Councillor Galvin, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's been a very challenging year, as Councillor Waters said. Thank you for the part you've played, and let's hope the coming year is more straightforward and you get to get out and about and wear your hat and enjoy it a bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Ackroyd, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We fully support the decision for the current Lord Mayor and Sheriff to continue in their respective roles for the next civic year, given the profound impact that COVID has had on the possibility for face-to-face opportunities to meet with individual citizens and groups. This is also an opportunity to thank them for the hard work they put in. We know how much their presence is valued in enhancing events and giving legitimacy and status, with the added effect of increasing publicity for groups and charities, and to be slightly less pompous, people really enjoy meeting them. Can I just say many thanks to Max and Laura for all their organisational skills. I say that as someone who's on the receiving end of those, albeit in a very minor way, as Deputy Lord Mayor, so I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ackroyd. Move on to the next item, item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest in the chamber? Councillor Price?
Yes, I have a non-pecuniary on item 6.
Thank you. Councillor Bogerline?
Do you have a pecuniary account on item 7A and 7C?
Thank you. Ash?
Yeah, I've got a non-pecuniary one on item 7C, please.
Okay, thank you. And I've forgotten the magic 4 words that the monitoring officer told to say, but you're obviously welcome to stay. Yeah. So you, all right, so Sandy, you're going to leave. Then I'll make sure somebody brings you back. Okay. Item 3, as you know, questions from the public, and we have received 2 public questions. The first is from Ms. Julie Young. Ms. Young.
Lord Mayor, you do the minutes first.
Have I missed the minutes? No? Questions from the public? Yep. But I have no problems about you making suggestions. So, Ms. Young, would you please ask your question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Poor air quality kills over 100 people in Norwich every year and damages the health of thousands more, including and especially children and the elderly. The government recently offered grants to local authorities to improve air quality, including projects to help reduce exposure to pollution hotspots and improve air quality, as well as knowledge about health risks. This opportunity was flagged with the City Council by Green Party councillors well in advance of the October deadline. However, it was not until February that the Council provided a response, acknowledging that they had missed the deadline. Can the Cabinet member explain how they will rectify this mistake so that the Council takes opportunities in future to improve air quality?
Thank you, Ms. Young. Councillor Hampton, would you like to raise the question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Alongside ambitious plans to deliver climate change targets, the Council's approved Air Quality Action Plan identifies many projects to address air quality citywide. Air quality in Norwich City Centre is improving. We have procured new monitoring equipment and are investigating mobile equipment to target further improvements. We work with the County Council to promote low/zero emission vehicles and travel shift to non-polluting roads. We successfully secured government funding to drive forward our ambitions, with funding to retrofit homes recently secured. We continually seek opportunities to secure funding for climate change and air quality, with plans being prepared to access for levelling up and shared prosperity funds. But many government grants available proves resource intensive for councils. In recognition, Whitehall has committed to streamlining the number of funds, and although we cannot bid for everything, we are proud of our record of securing funding for climate change, carbon reduction and air quality, and will continue to be ambitious when opportunities arise.
Ms Young, you're allowed a supplementary question. Would you like to make a supplementary question?
Thank you. Yes, I would. It's great to hear that you are improving the monitoring of air quality. Would the Cabinet members support community groups using their own air monitors so the Council can look at improved data and form a picture of issues across the city to supplement its own, what at the moment is quite limited monitoring?
Thank you.
It sounds like a concept and principle we would support. I'm more than happy to go away, speak to officers in a bit more detail, and if you've got further information about what that could look like, please do feel free to get in touch and we will get back to you on that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hamilton. We have a second question, and this one is from Mr Liam Calvert, who's aiming this question at the safer, stronger neighbourhoods, and that councillor is not present due to COVID. Yes, I thought of that. So Councillor Waters is going to respond on her behalf. So please go ahead and ask your question.
Over recent years, I've noted that local leaflets from the Labour Party repeatedly and prominently feature alley schemes, suggesting that this is a successful flagship initiative. Despite this, in my local ward of Wensum, according to data supplied by council officers, there were just 2 gates installed in the past 5 years. The total across the city in the last 5 years was just 21. Can you explain why these figures are so low?
Councillor Waters, would you like to respond?
I would. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Thank you. The microphone is still on. If you'd like to turn the hello.
Yeah, no, sorry about that.
If you'd like to just basically turn the microphone off, then you'll be able to hear my answer to your question. So the current scheme to fund alley gates for private residences started in March 2020, building upon a successful programme that ran from 2002 to 2007. That programme provided more than 500 gates across Norwich. The current initiative aims to plug any gaps and has been promoted in the local press, Norwich City Council publications and on website. Gates installed since March 2020 have protected 88 homes. 3 more are currently on order. Applications are welcome, the only criteria being that all property owners must provide written consent and the alley cannot be an adopted highway. The scheme manager can provide support to obtain consent via letting agents, but owners may not always be willing to provide that consent. In response to demand, the eligibility criteria of the scheme is being widened to include repairs to older gates to bring them back into use and protect more homes, and publicity will soon be available.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Mr Calvert, you've got the opportunity to pose a supplementary question. Would you like to do so?
Thank you. Yes, I would. When I talk to residents in my area about antisocial behaviour, what I hear a great deal of is what political parties promise them, but not a lot of...
Can I just remind you, it's a supplementary and it's a question, so please move to your question very quickly.
Of course. So, when I speak to residents in my local area, what they ask me a lot about is antisocial behaviour, and what they get promised is a great deal by political parties. But what they don't see a lot of is evidence of the ground of the results of these promises. Will the council undertake to review its processes and practices of report back in say the next 6 months perhaps.
Can I just remind people it's a supplementary question, and I'm going to invite Councillor Waters to respond on the issue that was raised, which is alley gates, and that's where we will focus. Councillor Waters, would you like to talk further on alley gates and how that fits into the framework?
Well, since I'm a substitute for the portfolio holder, what I would like to do is to provide Mr. Calvert with a written answer, which will outline a response to the points you have raised in your supplementary question.
I would welcome such.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lord Mayor. Now,
Just on point of order, the supplementary question had absolutely nothing to do with the original question, which was alligates. And I think it's really important that supplementary questions are actually related to the original question. So I really do feel that was out of order.
Yeah, I did try to make that point, but thank you for reinforcing it. Thank you very much. The questioners are both welcome to stay for the rest of the council meeting. You'll learn lots if you do, but I will understand if you need to go. Right. You're very welcome. There are no petitions, and so we'll move on to item 4, which Councillor Driver is understandably keen to get to, and that is the minutes of the last meeting. I call upon Councillor Waters to move the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of February 2022.
Formally moved, Lord Mayor.
And I call upon Councillor Galvin to second the minutes.
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Galvin. We'll now move to a vote. All those... Yes, my order paper's got... All those in favour? Okay, so they're unanimous. We now move to item 5.
Lord Mayor, sorry,
yes.
Got clarification from January's minutes, if that's possible.
Right, so yes, you're welcome to make a clarification. Can I just remind you that you're able to do that? It is my discretion that permits it. It's something I allowed for Councillor Boverline at a previous meeting. But please focus on the points that you wish to explain. So make it nice and clear. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's important that we as councillors follow the noble principles and ensure that what we say in council meetings is true and accurate. During January's full council meeting, Councillor Champion made reference to a community group which he is involved with and inferred that the group had been told by the City Council that the community garden on a specific piece of land which they were interested in would all go ahead not long after a meeting officers had with members of the group and with councillors. This subsequently did not happen. Lord Mayor, I was at the meeting and I recall officers being encouraging of the group, but in no way giving any guarantees or firm indication that the group would be able to have the proposed land for a community garden. Officers have confirmed to me that they had stated that they were hopeful that progress could be made with Morley Street, but couldn't make any promises to the group, and any action would depend upon what was found when the proposed site was explored. In addition, both Councillor Champion and I were sent an email from officers not long after the meeting, which stated that until officers were aware of the state of the land, further progress could not be made. Lord Mayor, our officers in this council work incredibly hard for this city. I appreciate that some may not see this as an issue, but in my mind, the comments which were made in January were in effect criticising the council for not doing something which the council had not committed to doing. As councillors, what we say in this chamber is important. We have a responsibility to be accurate in our comments and statements. I felt it necessary to correct the record.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, can I just make it clear that we are only concerned with statements of fact, which I'm pleased that you stuck to. It is something that I've let you do at my discretion, and those comments have been noted. So I will now take you to item 5, which is questions to Cabinet members. There are 21 such questions from members of the Council to Cabinet members, of which notice has been given in accordance with the provisions of Part 3 of the Constitution. A copy will be available on the Council's website. Members who have asked questions are permitted to put, and I emphasise these words, supplementary, i.e. on that same subject, and a question. So that may ask a supplementary question to the Cabinet member. I'm starting with question 1. Councillor Sands, you have made your question, you've got the reply. Do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Lord Mayor. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Waters, for your reply. The government's response to this tragedy has been predictably shameful and pathetic, with changes only being forced upon them from them under duress and due to the decent public outrage on this matter. Can you explain in more detail what support this council can provide working with partners, and whether you feel local government will be a respected partner in any future arrangement?
Councillor Waters, would you like to reply?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Sands, for your supplementary. Many of the points that you have raised in your supplementary were at the basis of a fairly extensive discussion when we were giving the freedom of the city to live and Odessa. What is certainly true is that the announcement by Michael Gove about a scheme to provide accommodation and support for Ukrainian refugees, drawing on, I suppose his phrase was, the generosity of the British people, and that is commendable, will require a lot more fleshing out, and Councillor Harris, Councillor Galvin and Councillor Wright, as well as myself, touched on some of the things, that questions that need to be answered and resources allocated. So this is an ongoing discussion. Our Chief Executive is Nilga Regional Lead on migration issues and is regularly updating all councillors as to how things are developing. But it does seem to me that we have to be proactive, hence the reason for the letter that we will be writing to the relevant government departments to making sure that we get the allocation of resources, a streamlined system to enable Ukrainian refugees to come to this country quickly and expeditiously. And that, I think, is going to be a dialogue that will be going on for some time. But I thank you for your very pertinent question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Waters. The next question, Councillor Vivian Thomas. Councillor Vivian Thomas, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you, Lord Mayor. I realise that this is a small development, but nonetheless a development which contributes to the number of much needed social housing homes being built right across the city. I believe that the development at Argyle Street will be one of the next to come to planning. Can you please give me any idea of the timescale for this?
Councillor Harris, would you please reply?
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Firstly, like yourself, I share the excitement of the development of the King's Arms. It's absolutely fantastic when you're out on site, and we'll be able to visit it together very soon. And we can see the difference it will make to the area, and obviously the difference it will make to the people who will eventually be in the much needed social homes. So, moving on to your question about Argyle Street, that's a development of 14 new homes for social rent. The plans have now been lodged and should be determined at the 30th of May Planning Committee. These homes will be built to passive house principles, and I'm pleased to see that we're getting a number of sort of small developments right across the city, because I think that makes a real difference. And sometimes it's with developments we're doing ourselves, sometimes it's with working with registered providers. But as we know, every home makes a difference. So thank you for your question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. Question 3. Councillor Button, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Waters, for your detailed reply. A key problem for so many of my constituents remains the lack of high-skilled, decently paid jobs within the city. While the Town's Fund programme of £25 million, which we run in 2020, is welcome, would the leader agree that structurally the government needs to get serious when it comes to investing in a decent agenda relating to skills, rising terms and conditions of work, and an industrial strategy which redistributes power, opportunity and dignity through employment?
Thank you very much, Councillor Button. Councillor Waters, would you like to respond?
Well, the concise answer to that supplementary question, Lord Mayor, is yes. There has been a signal failure over many years to put together a national plan which requires an understanding of the deficits in the skills base of the country and a remedy for that. And given that we have the impact of artificial intelligence in further automation that will take out many jobs, we really should be planning now for the jobs of the future. And of course, many of those jobs need to be as part of a green economy strategy, and that needs to be ramped up as well as meeting our obligations under COP26. And of course, it is absolutely right that there is little point in having low-paid jobs which people can't manage on. You know, two out of 5 people in this city are working, but they're on the poverty line. Hence, our campaign for the real living wage as a baseline. So, better quality jobs, better opportunity to be part of a productive workforce, and the associated redirection of resources, inadequate as they are, but running into many billions of pounds to support people on low incomes, living in expensive, often private rented property, and having to scrape around trying to manage a weekly budget, hence the proliferation of food banks, are things that should be something of the past. If we're going to be, in the Prime Minister's phrase, global Britain bestriding the world, I think of Ozymandias actually rather than anything else, then actually the role of the state and working very closely with local government, which knows what is happening on the ground, what the needs are in localities, would be an important first step forward.
Thank you very much. Question 4 is from Councillor Stoodley. Councillor Stoodley, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. I do. I asked this question because I was concerned that members of the public might have wrongly taken an impression from scrutiny that the Council has not considered those on universal credit, especially where Greens on that committee had supported a model for Hyde Park that would be much more expensive for all households. I'm happy therefore to stick my red flag in this and call it for what it was. So thank you, Councillor Packer, for your answer. Can you address more specifically what other options were put forward as an alternative, and how do these compare in terms of affordability to those on lower incomes? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stoodley. Councillor Pack, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Councillor Stoodley, for your question. I will begin by saying it must have been a coincidence that some opposition councillors have raised concerns about the affordability of all-weather tennis courts only when the courts at Hyde Park were to be developed. No concerns were raised when they were built at Waterloo Park or Eaton Park, but concerns were raised when they were proposed in the ward with 3 opposition councillors, which, as I say, I find interesting. When the plan for the all-weather, year-round, accessible courts at Hyde Park was put forward, there was a community group alternative which involved the retention of grass courts, which Green councillors were supportive of. My concerns about this option were the courts would not have been as accessible year-round. The courts would not have been generally as accessible for all our residents. And crucially, the sustainability of the business plan put forward was based on members paying £60 to access courts for just a few months a year. £60 versus our current option of £35 per household. As I've highlighted previously, that would have resulted in a family or household of 4 paying £240 compared to £35. I know which one of those options is more affordable. I'm sure the Green councillors who championed this community alternative, which seemingly would have put access to tennis out of the reach of many, will be able to explain their reasoning for supporting something which, in my view, would make regular access to such facilities as exclusive for the lucky few who have high levels of disposable income. I am looking forward to the opening of the courts, which will prove a real permanent enhancement of the park and result in more people accessing it for longer periods of time throughout the year, whilst gaining mental and physical well-being benefits.
Thank you very much, Councillor Packett. Councillor Giles, you have the next question to Councillor Harris. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I do. Thank you, Councillor Harris, for your response setting out the comprehensive and innovative measures the Council is taking to combat homelessness. What is clear, though, is that with private rent levels exploding, what is needed, despite our comprehensive social house building programme, is a larger amount of social housing across the city. I draw to the Cabinet members' attention a comment by the Chartered Institute of Housing saying that the government's right to buy policy has been a strategic failure, and I invite the Cabinet member to comment on what her thoughts are with regards to the right to buy policy. Thank you.
Councillor Harris.
Thank you. I believe that you're referring to some recent research undertaken as part of the upcoming 2022 UK Housing Review by the Chartered Institute of Housing. In Norwich, over the last few years, we've lost approximately 140 social rented homes each year through the right to buy. In many cases, these properties eventually end up entering the private renters sector at much higher rents than we were charging. Over 50% of our leasehold properties are now rented out by people who have in effect become landlords. These higher rents can have a knock-on effect of increased benefit bills, the loss of stock most certainly puts increased pressure on our waiting list and on the people who need the homes. The right to buy has already ended in Scotland and Wales. Will the government here have a rethink for England? I don't think so. We know that the cost of living crisis will only increase the need for social housing, and at the very least the government needs to further reform the use of the retained right to buy receipts. They need to invest in social housing because at the moment local authorities are nearly playing catch up with their own building. So I look forward to the publication of the full report.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Question 6 came from Councillor Huntley to Councillor Waters. Can I just remind everybody that it's a supplementary question. Councillor Huntley, do you have such a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor. The stored King's Arms site in Marcross was resolved by the CPO and is now having 5 homes for social rent completed there. This Labour administration is prepared to use compulsory purchase powers to deliver housing and regenerate brownfield sites. But what further opportunities does the receipt of £4.9 million from the Townsville programme offer?
Councillor Waters.
Thanks very much for your supplementary question. I think in the first instance, the existence of the fund will hopefully act as a disincentive for the market to sit on unused sites in the first place, which would be good because it is a long process of introducing compulsion to get brownfield sites of long vintage sorted out. And so we also need to be aware that derelict sites would need to meet the criteria of the fund. So not all stalled sites or derelict sites come onto the market part of this particular problem, but I think that power to incentivise by the existence of the fund will lead to the redevelopment of brownfield sites around the city, and that could be an important development.
Thank you very much, Councillor Waters. The next question came from Councillor Maxwell to Councillor Stoddart. Councillor Maxwell, do you have a supplementary question?
Well, yes, Lord Mayor.
Please go ahead.
Before I ask the question, it might be ironic that I left Manchester when I was just starting to build the Salford Quays. I had a deposit on a flat there, and I've been following closely with this, and thank you, Councillor, for the supplement, for the helpful reply to my question. But can you tell us more about the individual building listings?
Please go ahead. Councillor Stoddart.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Really happy to do that, because we're really proud of the listings that we've managed to obtain. And as you'll be aware, it was the City Council that asked for the review of listings on the East Norwich site, so that we were clear about the status of all buildings before any redevelopment plans. And clearly we've got newly listed the Conservatory at Carrow House, that's grade 2 star. Trouser Railway Station on Brackendale, that's newly listed at grade 2. And then there's a late 19th century engine house at Trouser Sewage Pumping Station, Brackendale, that's newly listed at grade 2. Also newly listed at grade 2 is the early 20th century engine house, boiler house and coal store at Trouser Sewage Pumping Station, Brackendale. And also already grade 2 listed, but new information added, is the timber drying bottle kiln at Deal Ground, Norwich. And we intend to ensure that these listed buildings are carefully looked after through the development process and cared for. And I guess we're already starting that in terms of Carrow House, which was already listed at grade 2, and the conservatory is now grade 2 star, and it needs work done to it. It does need to receive some care and attention. Well, we're already taking the newer part of Carrow House, and we're currently refurbishing that, and that will become much needed, meanwhile, office space for startups and small businesses. There's a shortage of that sort of accommodation in the city. But also, there's the older part of Carrow House, and the conservatory is of really important historical significance to the city. It was built in 1895 by the renowned Norwich-based manufacturing company Bolton & Paul, illustrated in their promotional catalogue at the time. It's got rich detailing, ornate patterns in the ironwork, stained glass and mosaic, remarkably well preserved, and it retains its original ventilation and heating equipment. So it does need some care and attention. That's exactly what we're going to do with it. We're going to make sure that it's restored to its original glory. And Bolton & Paul are part of the history of the city. They originated as an ironmongery shop in 1797. During the 19th century, they became iron founders and also constructed prefabricated wooden buildings, notably producing the huts for Scott's Antarctic expedition, which is quite remarkable, another quite remarkable link with history as well. And during the Second World War, the firm was a major producer of prefabricated buildings, wire netting and wooden sub-assemblies of aircraft. So we've got this rich history. We've got the railway history, the sewage pumping station, we've got the Coleman's history, and we've also got Bolton & Paul's history linked in there. Really, really important for history and the heritage of the city, and I'm really proud of what we've done and what we're doing.
Thank you very much, Councillor Starr. It was very interesting, but I think there were one or two people who thought, Short, but thank you very much, and you are within your rights to give that. Question 8 is from Councillor Driver to Councillor Kendrick. Councillor Driver, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor. Thank you. Can I just thank Councillor Kendrick for his reply? I just want to ask a question about the budget last month where we passed millions to support the city, despite the government cutting the revenue support grant, which almost doubled since 2010. Can the lack of access to decent, affordable housing remains a crucial issue for many of the residents in Leighton? Can you explain in more detail what this investment will mean in terms of building new houses?
Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you very much, Councillor Driver. I think your question is a very proper supplementary question to your original question regarding investment, and I think the timing is absolutely excellent as well. If I could actually answer this in relationship to myself and my family, I think the question of the need for affordable housing has never been more pertinent than it is at the moment, even before the events of the last few weeks. My own adult children, who are now in their 20s, simply are miles away from a situation where they can ever hope to buy their own home, and they find it very difficult to find any affordable housing for themselves. But I'd like to explain just what some of the investment that this local authority can be very proud to say in terms of what we are doing to build more affordable homes, and if I could give a certain personal aspect to it. First of all, can I point to the Marcross depot site, which is actually not very far away from me, which is an excellent example of how we are turning a former brownfield site, it was of course the city works department, it has been decontaminated and it will be used to build social housing so desperately needed in this city. Secondly, can I also mention the development in Bowthorpe? Again, we've had social housing there, as well as a mixed tenure of private developments thanks to NRL. And we now have a very thriving new community there in this very square area. And I know that I pressed many times, I'm sure this is going to be done within the summer, that we will hopefully have a site visit for all councillors to actually visit this exciting community. Thirdly, again, expressing from my own experience, is how we are working with the housing associations in developments. And it's been mentioned already, King's Arms, in Marcross Road is one that has been mentioned. And I have the great pleasure to say that every day, when I, in a very green way, travel on the bus from my home to City Hall on the 39 bus, I pass the building works, and can I congratulate the builders on the excellent work they are doing, and in the fact that there will be 5 more affordable homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kendrick. Just before we move on to the next question, can I just remind every member of the Chamber that this is one meeting. Some people, you've been granted marvellous voices. So when you're having a quiet huddle, in fact, it can be quite loud. So please respect people speaking. And I'm just going to stop there, but I will monitor the situation. So question 9 is from Councillor Peake. Is Councillor Peake here? Okay, that's wonderful. Martin, have you got a question?
Yeah, I do have a question. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kendrick, for your response. Working in the care home, I've been infected with COVID-19 twice, and I know how important the vaccination programme is. I remember when I was first elected that the Norwich Clinical Commissioners Group rented spaces in this building and was based there. Thinking of the future, would you support using the City Hall to work more closely with the NHS and other partners?
Thank you very much, Councillor Reid. Councillor Kendrick, would you like to respond to that
Again,
supplementary?
I think it's a very timely question. We can see actually here that many of our members are unable to attend because of COVID, and I think we should always remember that COVID is still very much with us. In fact, it is on the increase. I believe that in Scotland last week, 1 in 17 people were infected with COVID. So the vaccination centre that we have in the City Hall is playing a vital work in helping provide boosters for the entire population. Although I would also add, it isn't just City Hall, where the council workers working with NHS staff have provided pop-up vaccination centres. I know near where I live, the Norman Centre, Bignell Road, has been used for pop-up centres, and so have several community centres, including the Catton Grove Community Centre, which is not even in my ward, but where I am a member of the management committee. If there is a silver lining in the present increased outbreak of COVID, it has proven to be much less fatal than in the original outbursts from 2 years ago, and that is in a large degree as a result of the vaccination programme, which I'm so glad that the City Council is partnering with the NHS to provide here at City Hall and other locations. So thank you very much for asking that supplementary question.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Kendrick. Question 10 is from Councillor Champion to the leader. Councillor Champion, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I want to draw attention to my original question, if I may, which referenced welcoming asylum seekers and refugees, not just specifically from Ukraine, but from around the world to East Anglia. 1% of humanity, as we stand right now, is uprooted from their homes. This number is going to only increase as we move forward in time. With the recent invasion of Ukraine, I would argue that we have had a watershed moment. We've had a changing of an era. Nothing like this has occurred. I will get to my question. Sorry, with all due respect, everyone has deviated from this.
Excuse me. Now listen very carefully to what I'm going to say. Councillor Champion, you're entitled to ask a question. I'm giving you that space to ask a question. You did start to deviate somewhat, in particular. I remember your words talking about your views. Please ask the question.
Okay, Lord Mayor, thank you very much. With this in mind, I would like to ask specifically, would the Labour Council ask their party if they would support visa-free access of refugees, specifically from the Ukraine, but also from other countries, to access to come into the country? Already this evening I have heard from Lib Dems and from Labour talking about non-bureaucratic fashion of entry and how this is delaying entry. I've had communication with refugees who are suffering as a direct result of this bureaucracy. Other councils, South Norfolk Council has offered some of their premises to allow for...
question, please.
I've got multiple questions.
It's a supplementary question. So which is your supplementary question?
Okay. Would you allow for visa-free access to the UK for refugees so they don't get stuck in the bureaucracy?
Councillor Waters.
Thank you. So, and the interesting context as well. First of all, can I express a hope that the resident you referred to in your question is successful in bringing to safety relatives from Ukraine. Can I also hope that you will acknowledge, in addition to people from the abroad team, the significant partnership working carried out with Norwich City Council as a housing authority. And I suppose the third thing I would say is the debate, the discussion, the points that we made in the Freedom for Odessa and Live should have given you the answer to the point you have raised. What you can look forward to, Councillor Champion, is a joint letter drafted and prepared by myself and the leaders of the Green and Liberal Democrat groups, which will be sent to government and the tenor of those comments will be along the lines that you have raised in your supplementary.
Thank you very much, Councillor Waters. Question 11 is from Councillor Galvin. Councillor Galvin, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you.
Please go ahead.
So thank you for your answer, Councillor Waters. I think I can help out a bit here. There was an administrative error in the motion, and I've had an apology for that this evening from the monitoring officer. The motion actually read freedom of the city through all entities which protect it, or should have read that if it had been signed off as in its original text. So I wonder if we could actually go back and have a look at that point, particularly, just explore it going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Galvin. Councillor Waters.
Okay, I think the clarification is helpful to get that on the record. I mean, I do think, and then obviously there was a discussion and exploration about whether a river, in this case the River Wensum, could be given the freedom. That is not possible. A broader frame of reference about people at the River Wensum Strategy Partnership, I guess, is the focus of your point in your supplementary question. And I'm very pleased for the recognition that you're implying for the work of that group in the delivery plan that was presented to Cabinet and full Council and ably chaired by Councillor Stonnard. So I think the answer that I provided for you, that could fall within the frame of the terms of reference, is probably correct. But I would say there was just something that's stuck in my mind, and I just go back to the recording of the debate, and there does seem to be, you're obviously full square behind this and very positive about it, but I did just jot it down this morning, and from Councillor Osborne, I think it's 2 hours, 6 minutes into the debate on this item, this motion, and I quote, he said, given what has been going on for the last 7 years, it's not good enough. We need to be doing something more. So that seemed to be less than a stellar endorsement of a freedom of the city for an entity that has been supporting the River Wensum. But that may be an internal discussion that you may want to have with your colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you wish to make a point of order? Well,
has attributed something to me that I didn't say. So he said I was wanting this for the entity being the River Wensum Strategy Partnership. That isn't the only entity that protects the river. In fact, I'm actually referring to all the other entities. So I just wanted to clear that up.
Okay.
It says through all entities which protect it. That would include the Port Authority, the Norfolk Rivers Trust, many other entities. It wasn't actually aimed at that, so I just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Osborne, you had your hand up. Did you want to make a point or not? Was it being made for you?
Point of information.
Well, point of explanation, I hope.
Yes. I'm sure I did say that. I think I remember saying that, Councillor Waters. The point was that this has been debated for 7 years, and we've seen recent reports that the River Wensum is amongst the most polluted in the country. That's the point. We need to be doing something.
Oh, hang on. I think you've done something more. That you made a little speech. So I think that was an abuse of the privilege that I granted you. And I'll bear that in mind. Councillor Stannard, is this a point of order?
Point of explanation, please. So I'd like to explain that Councillor Osborne said to me that the River Wensum strategy isn't good enough. That's exactly what he said in the meeting. Even though I've been working on it for 7 years and the Green Party never taken blindest interest in it until recently.
Councillor Stomach, can I just stop this now? These points of explanation, and I dreaded this might happen, it's not an opportunity for a tit for tat. These are about clarification on things said in the meeting. So that's it. Move on to question 12 from Councillor Bergelein. Councillor Bergelein, do you have a supplementary?
I do, yes.
Please
thank
go
you,
ahead.
Lord Mayor. I'd just like to say, I do think it is important to look backwards over the last 10 years because I'm still trying to understand how it is possible that the council let slip assets into such disrepair that it now requires millions of reactive work. So this obviously now has budget implications for today. So could you please explain how this could happen when there was an asset review in place 10 years ago? I still struggle to understand this from
Thank you for your supplementary question, Councillor Bergelein. Councillor Kendrick, would you like to respond?
Councillor Kendrick will now give you a recent history lesson. You may have seen in the paper there was what's known as government austerity, in which millions of pounds of money was taken away from this local authority. And we haven't had as much money as we would have liked to actually upkeep our... Well, yes, people are, but it's happens to be true. This authority, like many others, haven't had the resources to do as much as we would like in improving and maintaining our assets. However, what we have done is still, I think, quite remarkable. We have an extremely rich asset base. Can I just say, actually, I don't actually recognise the review of how the 2010 was sort of somehow ignored. It certainly wasn't. Now, while the publication was rather before my election to this council, this almost sounds like it was at the time of Beowulf or Chaucer's Tales, but it was quite some time ago, so that's why we need another review. But I remember discussing this with the audit committee when I was elected in 2011, that report, and it certainly came up at Norwich MPS board meetings, which I attended, certainly up to about 2017, 2018. So it certainly was a piece of work that was regularly sourced and was useful. But obviously it's a bit long in the tooth now. It was 12 years ago, and we do need a new review.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kendrick. Question 13 is from Councillor Schmierer. Councillor Schmierer, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor. Thank you very much, Councillor Harris, for your response. The thing I do find a little bit puzzling is why did it require feedback from a consultation to the administration to realise that in 2022 an oil-filled boiler should not be replaced with a like-for-like oil-filled boiler when we've got a net zero carbon goal of 2030, which is absolutely essential given the climate crisis we're all facing.
Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Councillor Schmierer. The challenge of forward planning is that in the past we were relying purely on the age of the component rather than a whole house approach. And as you know, we are now changing that. So the new HRA asset management strategy is being developed and will dovetail with this year's environmental and sustainability strategy. And crucial to much of our work is the transferring of staff. That's going to be happening in about 2 weeks. A bit frightening when I say that out loud. And we will most certainly be setting them objectives that will measure. We measured with one-to-ones and annual appraisals to ensure that they're working to the appropriate targets. So I'm hoping that explains the situation to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. We have question 14, which is from Councillor Osborne. Councillor Osborne, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you.
Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you for your response, Councillor Stone. Obviously, I'm sure you'll agree with me that it's actually quite really inconvenience for a lot of people that the Anglia Square toilets are still closed. You said as much in your answer. The Anglia Square toilets have been closed now for 2 years, I think, possibly longer. And I've tried many times to speak to the Anglia Square management to get them reopened. They keep on saying that they're not going to for various different reasons. I've also tried working with Great and other businesses nearby to open toilets for people who want to visit the square. I would like to ask if you would join me in asking the Anglia Square management to open the toilets, because obviously it will take a long time until Anglia Square redevelop those changing places toilets.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Stonham, would you like to reply?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Question 15 was from Councillor Price. Councillor Price, do you have a supplementary question?
As the whole of the city centre is represented by Queen councillors, will the cabinet member make sure that ward councillors, with their intimate knowledge of the area and as representatives of the local residents, will be included in the development stage of a city centre regeneration scheme, which Prince of Wales Road area is cited in?
Thank you very much, Councillor Price. Councillor Stoddard, would you like to reply?
Yes, I think it's important to have all councillors involved in such regeneration planning because, of course, the city centre is really important to the whole economic and social life of the city, and so it's actually of concern to all of us in this chamber, not just those councillors who represent the ward. And so, whilst I recognise that you want to have an important influence, and I agree that should be the case, we need to make sure that other councillors also are involved. So you will be appropriately involved.
Thank you very much for that reply. Question 16 is from Councillor Graham. Councillor Graham, do you have a supplementary question?
I do reply, thank you.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Hampton, for your response. I can really understand the need to target the, and help where need is greatest. But we also know that all homes need to meet the zero carbon standard in time. So my question is, can you reassure me that people who already have a little bit of loft insulation won't be excluded from future plans when the retrofitting strategy eventually emerges?
Thank you very much. Councillor Hampton.
Thank you for the supplementary and the original question. We, as you allude to, all homes need to be brought up to standard. I think we're hopefully going to have a discussion later this evening about the various mechanisms we can do that and the limitations we have as a council against the very difficult financial and political backdrop this government has given us. So we will always try and make provisions to get as many homes brought up to that standard as possible, but as you allude to, I think it is absolutely right that we have to start with those who are most vulnerable, most at risk of fuel poverty. And as for, I think, your point about homes with already some insulation, I'm not particularly a technical expert on this. There's a form on the front of the Cozy City website where residents can explain their circumstances just afresh and get an opinion on whether any of this is suitable for them. So specific queries like that are best directed through that process and to officers. And if the situation happens again where a response hasn't been received from a council inquiry asking these sorts of questions, just to remind councillors that not only do I have sustainable warmth in my portfolio on the climate change side in digital inclusion, I also have customer service, so it's completely appropriate, especially in issues like this that span both, to get in touch with me earlier rather than wait for a public meeting like this to roll along to raise it.
Thank you, Councillor Hampton. The next question, question 17, is from Councillor Haynes. Councillor Haynes, do you have a supplementary question?
I think I take some issue with the choice of
Excuse me, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes.
Then please go ahead.
Okay. I think I take some issue with the choice of preferring to remain without gas in the answer to this question. And that might seem petty, but I think given that, you know, we've both got motions addressing cost of living crises in this, and I think, you know, it's not about preferring, it's about the fact that they're having to make these decisions. So how many tenants are having to make the decision not to reinstate their gas, and what support is the council offering to try and get them their heating back?
Thank you very much. Councillor Harris.
Thank you. Well, I think part of your question is actually answered within my first response. When we are saying that some tenants choose not to reinstate their gas supply, we've surprisingly enough found that some tenants don't actually want the gas that's in their property because they're frightened of gas and they would prefer just to use another form of heating. So that's the reason for using the word. I can't give you numbers, but you know, we have to consider that you're quoting 218 properties over the last 2 years. And as we have close to 15,000 properties, it's a very small proportion. Having said that, to those people who are left without gas and it's capped off, it's a real issue for them. And we are trying to address this with better communication to warn people that, you know, when the gas service is done, that they need to have the relevant gas supply. And if the gas is capped, we will do everything we can to support them to get it put back on if they want to.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. The next question is question 18 from Councillor Carlo. Councillor Carlo, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you.
Please go ahead.
Unfortunately, Councillor Oliver isn't here, so I'm not sure to whom I should direct the question.
Well, I think if you would like to do that, you'll get a written reply.
Okay, lovely, thank you very much, yes. So, my question is, given that a wide range of powers is available to the Council to keep pavements clear of bins, why has the Council not used them in terraced streets over the last few years, allowing the problem to grow? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carlo. So you get a written reply. We now come to question 19 from Councillor Youssef. Councillor Youssef, do you have a supplementary question, Richard?
I do, yes.
Please go ahead.
I must congratulate the Council on the steps they're taking towards this issue. However, I must ask why the inclusive training programme mentioned in my response is not being offered to frontline agency staff.
Thank you very much. Councillor Waters, would you like to reply to that question?
Okay, thank you for your question, and I will provide you with a reply in relation to that. It may be to do with how long those agency staff are in post, but I couldn't give you a specific answer on that. But what I will also say, if you have any, before you leave the Council, if you have any further thoughts or points on this really important agenda which you'd like to pass on to me, I'd be grateful to receive them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Waters. I suspect we have slightly covered the 13-minute limit, so the last two questions will fall. And we'll move on to the next piece of business, which is a report. The pay policy statement for 2022-2023, and I call upon Councillor Waters to move this item. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'm conscious of time. I'm conscious of three well-crafted, shaped and reshaped motions, which I know colleagues are keen to debate. So I will be brief and obviously be happy to take questions on any part of this report. So it will be familiar to councillors, part of the 2011 Localism Act, that we have to present a pay policy to full council March each year, and here we are again. And the overarching principles around our pay policy statement is part of the remuneration that enables the City Council, as it were, as an organisation, to be in good shape, to attract and retain staff, talented staff and people who would want to work in public service, and to send out that positive signal. So a number of areas are covered. I have to be clear that this relates to staff directly employed by City Hall, and it covers a number of national agreements that have been negotiated. So the pay supplement for what is just left of this financial year has only just been agreed, and we have yet to receive a pay claim from the trade unions for 22-23. There are assumptions in the budget, and we discussed this as part of the Budget Council a few weeks ago, about expected pay increases, but obviously cognizant of some of the issues around the standard of living crisis, which many people currently face. The positive news about pay multiples, if one compares it with some of the more egregious examples of the City of London, the ratio between the highest and the lowest paid employee in the organisation is a ratio of 1.7.45, and between the median earners and the highest paid employee is 1.49, 1.5. The Council is a powerful advocate for the real living wage. There are various relocation expenses and travel features in the report. There is no bonus scheme, there is no performance-related pay, but for people to enhance their performance, there is payment of professional fees and subscriptions, and a recognition where appropriate of overtime enhancements and honoraria. And there are, in terms of the Council's work around redundancy, the calculation is based on people's wage, their salary at the Council, not the statutory minimum, and that is at a ratio of 1.5. In terms of contracts for service, and I've had a notification that there were a number of points raised by Councillor Price on this, and I have that information. I'm sure he'll be asking his question when he returns to his seat. We obviously use agency work in terms of filling capacity, temporary employment for things like maternity leave and other considerations. And finally, on the final page of the report, 6.17, salary sacrifice. The Council provides salary sacrifice arrangements, has done for many years, for childcare vouchers and the Cycle to Work initiative. And in terms of the gender pay gap, there is a link to that in the report, but I can tell you that the gender pay gap between the highest employed and the median is 0, and between the highest and lowest paid is at 4.9% as a variance. So with those salient points, Lord Mayor, I move the report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Waters. Councillor Harris, I call upon you to second this item.
Happy to second the motion and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to invite group spokespersons. Councillor Vogel, would you like to make some points on behalf of the Green Party?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The statutory requirement to publish a pay policy is an incredibly important one in terms of transparency. Government guidance stresses that it's the responsibility of locally elected members to put in place local arrangements on senior pay and reward that are fair, accountable, and deliver best value for taxpayers. In Norwich, we have been very fortunate to have recruited an excellent new team of senior officers in the highest paid positions. The shortcomings from previous years they have uncovered so far, from issues with housing safety compliance to serious problems with repair backlogs, speak for their skills and their value to the council, tenants and residents. There is also no getting away from the fact that if we want good people, high skills and experience, then the council needs to offer competitive pay. However, it does still not sit easy with me that our highest paid officer can earn up to 120,000 more per year than our lowest paid employee. But we have to also acknowledge that in the grand scheme of corporate pay structures, the council's pay ratio of 1 to 7.5 is a comparably fair ratio. In 2017, the Equality Trust's pay tracker highlights that CEOs in the UK's top 100 companies pocket an average of 386 times that of a worker earning the national living wage. In 2020, a report by High Pay Centre highlighted Ocado as having the biggest median ratio. Their CEO earns a staggering 2,605 times the £22,500 paid to the online grocery delivery staff on average. The Equalities Trust recommendation is to expect that reporting of pay ratios should be extended to companies for which it is currently not a statutory requirement. So I would like to ask again that the Council publishes a pay ratio for NCSL, its arm's length company, to help normalise public statements about the difference between the highest and lowest paid workers. In addition to this, to achieve full transparency and to work towards pay equality, I would also like to request that in next year's pay policy statement, the Council includes a section that highlights the situation for agency staff that work for the Council but are not directly employed by the Council. I appreciate that's not part of the statutory requirement, but I think it would be a really good idea to add that. It is important that we are able to understand how, for example, median pay changes if these workers are taken into account. And I would also like to go even further and extend this document to a transparent reporting of terms and conditions of all employees across the Council, agencies and arm's length companies. Because to ensure that we make steps towards equality, it is important to not only consider pay, but also pension contributions, the amount of holiday workers are entitled to, and sick pay arrangements.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bergline. I call upon Councillor Wright to speak on behalf of the Lieutenants.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'm just going to skim through my points to keep this brief. Just picking out the bit on the Living Wage Foundation, I think, once again, we're reminded what a really important thing it is that this Council remains an accredited member of the Living Wage Foundation. And when we think about the likely impact of inflation as we move through the year, the Living Wage Foundation, when it announces its new rates in November, will mean that living wage employers can be more agile in ensuring that wages rise when otherwise that might not necessarily be the case. Just going down through to the expenses and travel section, the document talks about the mileage that we pay for staff members who use their private car for travel. I note that Norfolk County Council actually pays a mileage amount for official travel undertaken by bicycle. I'm aware that there are some officers who undertake official duties by bike for this council, and it would be interesting actually if such a scheme could be brought forward in future to encourage the use of bicycle for official purposes. On the gender pay gap, it was quite interesting actually going to the website there and popping in Norwich City Council for two reasons. That one is to see that how the quartiles that are gender pay is broken down by, and the significant larger proportion of disparities in the lowest. So we've got far more women doing lower paid jobs in the council. But actually, that wasn't the thing that really drew my eye, caught my eye. The document talks about the fact we don't pay a bonus. But on that website, it talks about the gender gap between who's received the bonus at this council. So it says, when comparing the mean average bonus pay, women's mean bonus pay is 12.5 times higher than men's. Who received bonus pay? 1.1% of women and 2% of men. So I guess I'm interested in why this website has information about the fact that this council pays a bonus when the pay policy says we don't. Do we pay a bonus? Is there an error in how the data has been uploaded? Or is there something else that we pay that ends up looking to government like it's a bonus? I don't expect an answer to that, Chair, Councillor Waters, but if that's something we can certainly find out, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Do any other councillors wish to speak on this item? No. Okay, I call up Councillor Waters. Would you like to respond, please?
Okay, thanks very much, and just respond to some of the points that have been made. Councillor Birdline's comment about the differential between being the chief executive of this authority and our lowest paid workers on scale 4. I mean, no doubt you would recognise that we need a structure which reflects the level of responsibility, and I certainly wouldn't want to go back to the days of Eric Pickles. And I know it was debated in this chamber about why did you need a chief executive? Couldn't it just be done by somebody on £20,000 a year? Well, if you could find somebody to take on those responsibilities at that level, that would be impressive. But it was designed to effectively emasculate a council in terms of its effectiveness, given the hostility of Conservative government, which continues, but was particularly visceral under Eric Pickles at that time. In regards to the statutory extension, as it were, but it's not, obviously, as you quite rightly said, something which government requires. In terms of the company Norwich City Services Limited, I mean, the fact is that if Norwich City Services as a company wishes to publicise their terms and conditions and pay rates, they are entitled to do that. But what we do know is there's been a significant enhancement in terms and conditions and pay of the staff that transferred over from Norse, where I have to say the terms and conditions and pay were marking time for the best part of a decade. The point about agency staff is an important one, and I would refer you to the top of page 10, which says that agency workers, the council will aim to pay workers engaged through a contract for services at a rate consistent with the pay and reward of the council's directly employed workforce. I think that equity is particularly important. And yes, an interesting point about a mileage rate for bicycles. That's certainly worth investigating, given that we have a splendid and comprehensive network of pedalways. And bonus pay, that is an important point, and I just wonder if the descriptor that is used describes something which is not something we do, but it's honoraria or it's a supplement for work, but it would be good to clarify that point. So thank you for digging down into the detail of that, and also on the interesting sort of differentials between bonuses, however those are construed in gender terms as well. So we'll dig into those. But can I thank everybody for their thoughtful and interesting comments, and I hope we can support the report.
Thanks, Councillor Waters. I will now move to a vote on the approval of this report. All those who are in favour of approving the report. Right. So that's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to the first motion, motion 7A, which has been dubbed the Robin Hood tax. Two amendments. Of course, we will call you back. Two amendments have been received to motion 7A from Councillor Osborne and from Councillor Stannard. These have been circulated. Councillor Wright has indicated that he is willing to accept these amendments. So if there are no member objections to that, the amendment will become part of the substantive motion. Does any member object? No. Okay. So I think you also have now, therefore, on your bench, a copy of the amended motion. I shall read it out. So I call upon Councillor Wright to move motion 7A as amended. Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'd like to begin by thanking colleagues from the Labour and Green groups for their helpful amendments, which I've been happy to accept. The motion calls on the government to take financial action against energy producers, strengthen financial support for those that need it the most, and to ensure that proper investment is made in installation going forward. The Robin Hood tax, or one-off levy on the super profits of oil and gas firms, would raise an estimated £5 billion from companies that are making record profits from soaring energy prices. This would be used to support vulnerable families facing a crippling 50% increase in their energy bills. And in fact, since I researched this motion and should have brought it to Council back in January, I think some of these figures are probably now a little on the low side given events. So when I wrote the motion back in January, we recently heard that Russian energy giant Gazprom's trading arm, based in London, had cashed in a £179 million dividend. Meanwhile, the boss of BP has described his company as a cash machine after soaring oil and gas prices boosted its profits to £2.4 billion in the third quarter of 2021 alone. I recently heard one senior energy company leader talk about the tax on super profits as being a disincentive to innovate. But these profits are not coming from innovation, they're coming from on the back of rising gas prices, in part caused by the global instability we currently see on Europe's eastern border. But surely it can't be right that a few energy fat cats are raking in from record gas prices while millions of people can't afford to heat their homes. The Robin Hood tax, or windfall tax, will be used to fund an emergency package of support for local residents facing eye-watering increases in their heating bills. Members of this council may already have noticed their own bills increasing if they're not lucky enough to be on a fixed price contract. Figures show the average yearly bill for homeowners in Norwich is set to skyrocket by £504, equivalent to £42 a month once the new energy price cap comes into effect. Last year, the average homeowner in Norwich paid out £638 for their annual energy bill. Under the new price cap coming into force into April, that figure is set to rise to £1,142. The energy price cap is expected to be around £1,865 according to energy experts. Recent tragic events are likely to see further rises on the horizon for residents in Norwich, unless action is taken to help them with the cost of bills, with the price cap expected to increase to over 2, 3 or even 4,000 when it's revised again in the autumn, a level of uncertainty that's hugely unsettling. The motion calls for measures that would include the doubling and the expansion of the warm home discount to those who receive universal credit or pension credit, giving 18,500 households in Norwich £300 each off their heating bills this year. It also calls for the doubling of the winter fuel allowance, helping over 22,500 local pensioners in the area keep their homes warm. Money would also be spent from the tax on kickstarting a new 10-year home insulation scheme, recognising that the New Economics Foundation estimates that upgrading all of the UK's leaky homes to EPC grade C requires a total spend of £35.6 billion over a 5-year period. This money will be spent on reducing people's energy bills in the long term through an emergency home insulation programme to upgrade poorly insulated UK homes, including through fully funded grants for those in fuel poverty and on low incomes. Although there are those who argue against the windfall tax, in an article in the Guardian on February 11th, Michael Jacob pulls apart the various aspects of their argument. He says, far from being economically illiterate, a windfall tax is economically very rational. A huge spike in oil and gas prices is being passed on to UK consumers, with those on low incomes catastrophically hit. On the other side of the ledger, these costs appear as huge windfall profits to oil and gas companies, unrelated to anything they've done. This is grossly inequitable. Taxing some of these profits to provide help to low-income energy bill payers is an entirely sensible way of rebalancing the costs and the benefits, and he's spot on. There is nothing new about the fuel poverty issue. By this year, with retail prices and energy prices surging and new energy supplies failing, keeping people warm should be soaring up the political agenda, which is why I hope to gain unanimous support this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wright. I call upon Councillor Ackroyd to second this item.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Formally second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Ackroyd. I'm now going to invite the group spokespersons. Councillor Hampton, would you like to speak on behalf of the Labour Party?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you very much to Councillors Wright and Ackroyd and the Liberal Democrat group for bringing this motion forward tonight. This council remains completely committed to supporting our most vulnerable citizens through these difficult times. We continue to provide energy advice and to help residents who are struggling with their fuel bills to access appropriate support. And we have again renewed our council tax reduction scheme, so those most in need can receive 100% council tax discount. Tackling the climate crisis in a socially just way, including promoting energy efficiency and making renewable energy accessible and affordable to more people, has been a top priority for this Labour administration. In 2015, we became one of the first councils ever to run a collective solar scheme. This has delivered nearly 8,000 panels and avoided 1,800 tonnes of carbon dioxide. Retrofitting is on the agenda tonight as a whole other topic of discussion, but we will continue to do all we can to improve the efficiency of housing in the city. Our Cosy City programme utilises external sources of funding such as ECO and has helped over 1,500 private sector households secure funding for insulation measures. We're pleased to recently have been awarded 3.1 million from central government to deliver retrofit measures, in this case a mixture of insulation work and solar panels to the benefit of 200 private sector homes. Over the past 6 years, we've invested £129 million in improving our own housing stock with further work in the pipeline. The energy efficiency of our own homes is above the national average and the average for private homes in Norwich. I'm proud that we've led locally on this agenda, and the improvements we've delivered will offer those residents who have benefited some extra resilience in the coming months. But, as ever, we need the government to play their part too. This means properly funding local government, and it means introducing long-term and short-term measures to fix this energy crisis. And to be clear, the energy and the cost of living crises are a consequence of Tory mismanagement and inaction. Yes, there is a global price crisis, and the events unfolding in light of the brutal invasion of Ukraine aren't going to help. But 10 years of the Tories' failure on energy has left us uniquely exposed. The Tories have failed to meet the vast potential of British renewable energy, and they've failed to make enough of our homes warm and well insulated. They've also failed to properly regulate our energy market, leading to dozens of energy companies going bust, with all of us footing the bill. Their additional failure to provide adequate short-term support for residents facing bill rises is a political choice which will have huge consequences. The Chancellor's £200 one-off payment and the £150 council tax rate rebate for those in band A to D just doesn't cut it when the price cap this time round is set to go up by nearly £700 and who knows by how much later in the year. The £200 is in effect a loan and it just kicks the can down the road. Distributing money through the council tax system is flawed, and bill-paying groups such as renters and students will typically not receive the benefit from this. Labour nationally, however, is calling for an expansion and increase of the warm homes discount, removal of VAT on domestic energy bills for a year, financial measures to smooth the cost of supply failure, and a £600 million contingency fund for other purposes related to energy price rises. These proposals are fully costed, and in large part this would be covered by a windfall tax on oil and gas companies, much as this motion tonight is suggesting, so we're more than happy to support it. Oil and gas giants are making an estimated £900 every single second, while at the same time people are being forced to choose between heating and eating. This isn't right. A windfall tax, or Robin Hood tax, is morally and economically the sound thing to do. Short-term measures like this are essential to tackle the immediate and devastating effects of price rises, but we do also desperately need to see long-term system-level change to provide security for the future. This means fixing our broken energy system and looking at better models of control. It means kick-starting an energy efficiency revolution to insulate 90 million homes below EPC Band C in order to cut gas imports and cut bills. We need proper investment in renewable energy and a Green New Deal to deliver skills, training and decent jobs in this sector with workers' rights at its heart. So thank you again very much for bringing forward this motion tonight. We'll certainly be happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Hammond. Now we'll call upon Councillor Osborne to speak on behalf of the Green Party.
Thank you. I haven't written a speech, but we've been in here quite a long time. I think we all agree on the point of this motion. We're going to talk about retrofitting later, so I support this motion and won't say anything further.
Thank you very much. Councillor Osborne, are there any other councillors who wish to speak on this motion? No. Okay, then I put back to Councillor Wright. Would you like to respond to this?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you for the support that has been received. Thank you to Councillor Hampton for highlighting the various ways that the Council is supporting residents at the moment. And I'd also like to thank Sir Keir Starmer for using his position as Leader of Her Majesty's official opposition to make sure the issue of a windfall tax or Robin Hood tax is kept high up the political agenda. Thank you, Councillor Osborne, for your very succinct comments.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wright. We'll now move to vote on this item. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. We're moving on to item 7B, the retrofit task force motion. An amendment to 7B has been received from Councillor Hampton, which has been circulated. Councillor Osborne has indicated that he is willing to accept the amendment. If no other member objects, the amendment will become part of the substantive motion. I cannot see any objections, so we will move to the debate itself. I call upon Councillor Osborne to move motion 7B as amended.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Again, I'll keep this fairly brief because this is something we've talked about before. It was something we talked about at the budget meeting last month, something we talked about at the County Council meeting. We're all aware of the cost of living crisis. I hope we're all aware of the need to retrofit houses. Just to explain a bit on what the retrofit task force would do, it will be a collaboration between, it will be local authority led, it will be a collaboration between the council, education providers, further education providers, vocational education providers, renewable energy and construction industries, to make sure that there's coordination and scaling up retrofitting, including pooling resources to retrofit social housing as a first step, skilling up workers, and sources of finance to retrofit housing across tenure. Having spoken to administration councillors, I know this is something that is being looked at and is being worked on, which I'm pleased to hear. What I would say in relation to the amendment that I accepted, I was happy to accept the amendment. The amendment removed the commitment to establish and start working on the task force within 12 months. I find that really quite worrying, quite frustrating, that over a year ago I proposed a motion on a retrofit strategy for council housing. We've still not seen that motion, still not seen that strategy. 3 years ago now, was it 3 years ago or 4 years? 3 years ago, there was a motion, declaration of climate emergency. And yet we're saying, oh, we might produce a paper in 12 months' time. We either treat this as an emergency or we're not. Similarly with the biodiversity strategy, but that's a whole other story. So I'm pleased that the council is taking up the suggestion, and I'm pleased that you're investigating examples from what other councils are doing, but I would really urge you, if this is a climate emergency, if this is a cost of living emergency, please get on with it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Osborne. I call upon Councillor Haynes to second this motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And thanks as well to Jamie and Sandra, who I know have been pushing this for years within the council. And thank you to the Labour councillors who amended this motion in the attempt to improve it. So thank you very much for that. I think it's really useful that this task force is being established, that this report is going to be coming to Cabinet. I would echo Councillor Osborne's concerns about 12 months being a long time, because we've got this motion, we've got the motion on the cost of living crisis. It's dominating the newspapers, how much cost of living, gas prices, everything is going up. How many more jobs are we going to have in 12 months? And I think we should be pushing to bring this as soon as we possibly can. But I think it shows we're taking the problem seriously as a council. It fits really well with the cost of living crisis motion, and it fits with our ambition as a council to be seen as a leader on these kinds of green initiatives. And that's really important, I think. We've got lots of people in Norwich who do live on the breadline, who are really struggling, who are sitting there every month when their gas and electric bill rolls in and thinking, how am I going to pay this? Looking at it and going, oh, words I can't say in this council chamber when I saw my most recent one, put it that way. It affects single adult households, it affects single parents, it affects pensioners, it affects all people on low incomes in the city, and even some of those who would consider themselves well off are being affected by this. It's not just the people that are the poorest anymore that are being hit by this, that are being unable to afford bills. Some of those are living in our properties, some of those are living in all parts of the city, and we really, really need this to be pushed as soon as possible. I think the local element of it is important as well, skilling up local people in jobs that will be relevant far into the future, that they can build on these jobs and basically benefit all sides of their life, from the cost of living crisis, from their bills, through to being able to get a better job in a local industry that we're supporting, that we're being the leaders on this. And we absolutely cannot trust the government to be the leaders on this. As this outlines, insufficient and sporadic government grants I'm picking out from this. They cannot be trusted. The Conservative government cannot be trusted to make any movement on this. We need to be looking to do it for ourselves as a forward-thinking council, making a good thing for the citizens of Norwich.
Thank you very much, Councillor Haynes. I now invite group spokespersons. Councillor Hampton, would you like to speak on behalf of the Labour Party?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Osborne and Councillor Haynes for bringing this motion and for accepting our amendments to it. I will also try to keep this brief and not repeat what I said in the previous debate. Retrofitting is important to lower emissions, keep homes warm and cut fuel bills. This is something this council takes very seriously. It's a prime example of retrofitting of how we can tackle the climate crisis in a just manner, bringing obvious benefits to the lives of our residents, and hopefully therefore improving buy-in for climate solutions. We've long been delivering retrofit measures as a council, and I won't repeat what I've just gone through, but hopefully that has demonstrated from Cosy City through to utilising pots of government money as it comes along, our Sober Together scheme, lots of measures, and it is something we remain committed to. We are proud of what we've been able to achieve so far, and we will continue bidding for that funding and delivering as many measures as we can, but at the same time, we cannot let the government off the hook. The Tories' heatings and building strategy fell way short of their own manifesto pledges on retrofitting, let alone the reality of the situation, and their Green Homes grant failed spectacularly. And of course, local government funding has been slashed by around 40% since 2010. We could do much more, much faster with proper government support, and we will continue to make that point at every opportunity. And again, thank you to the proposers for accepting our amendments, which make more explicit the government's role and the need to hold them fully to account. But you're right, the reality is the cost of living crisis and climate crises aren't going to go away anytime soon, sadly, because of that Tory inaction, but we still want to do all we can locally to give as many residents as possible resilience and security in the face of this. We are always looking at new ways to achieve this. The approach of working with partners and across directorates to deliver measures to benefit the most vulnerable residents in our city is one we've already identified and will be working towards. The detail of exactly what a retrofit task force in Norwich would look like and what this can deliver and in what time frame is still to be determined, and we'll continue to look at those case studies and best practice examples from other areas. This, unfortunately, is unlikely to be a quick, immediate fix to the imminent cost of living crisis. It will take time and resource to get up and running. And of the handful of authorities who have set up an explicit task force for retrofitting, like Lewis and Manchester last year, that was 6 months to a year ago, and they're still not at the stage where they are delivering these measures on the sheer scale you would need to tackle those crises. So we'll be following those closely, and it'll be really interesting to see what we can borrow and learn from them, but there is no one-size-fits-all model which we can just lift and drop onto Norwich. For example, at the core of Lewis is cooperation and collaboration between 6 authorities, 5 of which are non-Tory, and sadly here in Norfolk we're operating under quite different political landscape. Greater Manchester combined authorities, their reach and level of resources are quite comparable to us, but as I say, there's still things we can likely borrow from some of these models. And where we have time, so to wrap up, we know the reality of the situation, but there's a Tory government intent on cutting councils and largely ignoring the climate cost of living crises. This is going to provide barriers and limitations for us, but it won't stop us looking for innovative new solutions to these issues and to protect the interests of our residents. Labour Group members will also continue to campaign hard for a Labour government who would properly fund councils and deliver a national retrofit strategy to bring the 90 million homes under EPC Grade C up to standard. In the meantime, we're happy to support this motion tonight, given that our amendments to it have been accepted, and thank you again, as it reflects an approach we've already identified to pursue and are happy to follow. So, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hampton. I now call upon Councillor Lovett to speak on behalf of the Lib Dems.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I will try and be brief with what I'm going to say and cut it down considerably. We do agree that this is an important piece of work that needs to be done, and also the fact that it's best left to local authorities and not the government, because the government have shown that their schemes are far too bureaucratic and oversubscribed, and that's what's led to the failure each time. The motion does reference Lewes District Council in Sussex, who are piloting a retrofit task force and approach, and the details were very readily available online. And so I was able to sort of pull out the fact that they are partnering with the University of Brighton, which has developed solutions for the zero carbon retrofit market. It's one of the UK's leading establishments in this sector, with a proven track record of delivering commercial-ready solutions through its Clean Growth UK. And I do feel that that's a great advantage that they have that we wouldn't have. Secondly, they are working with a leading UK sustainability architect and lecturer at Brighton University, Duncan Baker-Brown. And thirdly, as Councillor Hampton said, they have reached agreement with 6 other councils in their area to pool resources to create a £1 billion fund for insulating and installing renewable energy to some 40,000 social homes. So, with all that in mind and the advantages that they have, I question whether we wouldn't be better waiting to see, to follow their progress and to learn from them. I mean, the motion is saying we could be an exemplar. I mean, that's incredibly ambitious. There are people that are struggling with this. It's a really complex piece of work because it cuts across so many other organisations. We're bringing them together and coordinating them. And I say it is a very complex piece of work. And obviously each area is going to be different, but I think you can learn from the principles that perhaps Lewes or Manchester, as you mentioned, will have provided. And perhaps in the next year that's the sort of thing that we will do before we bring a paper to Cabinet. We don't have a leading sustainability architect willing to work with us. But I suppose if we don't go and look, we might not. We don't know until we look. And as for the University of East Anglia has been wonderful in lots of ways. The Tyndale Centre giving us lots of information and advice. But they aren't the University of Brighton that's got ready-made solutions to some of the retrofitting that's needed. So the retrofitting is a notoriously complex field of work requiring collaboration between energy and construction industries, architects, educational establishments, and even behaviour change experts, which is what Lewes is using. These various elements need coordination, and it is, I believe, at a local level, with local knowledge and local councils, that can be successful. And so therefore, I would say that whilst we support the principle of retrofitting, the need to do it as quickly as possible, we do not need to start from scratch. We should wait and look at what other local authorities are doing, learn from their schemes, and then adapt them to what Norwich needs. So I look forward to hearing the principles of that will be put in place with the retrofit task force in the coming year.
Brilliant timing. Thank you very much, Councillor Lubbock. Do any other councillors wish to speak on this? I can see Councillor Bogerline. Yes, please go ahead.
I just wanted to say very quickly, Councillor Lubbock, of course, it's a complex issue, but I think you're slightly too pessimistic. We've had conversation with architects who have actually indicated that they would be very interested in looking at a prototype for the most common types of houses in Norwich. So that would be a step forward to look at how these could be retrofit. That's not 100% fit, but you could be, up to 70% there, and then there could be model houses that show people how to go about this. So I think there are people that are willing to do that. We have an excellent School of Psychology that has a behaviour change sub-team in it, and we've worked actually with Norwich City Council and Norfolk County Council on behaviour change signage in terms of idling with them, and they will be very, very happy to do similar schemes again. So I think, the council's rightfully proud of the 2040 vision groups, so I think something similar. There's a lot of willing professionals out there, and I think if we can pull them together, it can be fantastic on a similar scale.
Thank you, Councillor Bogerline. Councillor Sands.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I will try to be brief. I'd like to remind everyone in Council that we had a levelling up scheme prior to 2010, known as Revenue Support Grant. Emma Hampton made a brief reference to that. This share of the total tax take made to local authorities allowed for all sorts of programmes, such as retrofitting. The Revenue Support Grant, already reduced by 2013-14, stood at 7.82 million. This past year, it was reduced to a mere 220,000. What is needed is a new government and a proper funding formula for local government.
Thank you, Councillor Sands. Does any other councillor wish to speak? No. I would like to go back then to Councillor Osborne. Would you like to respond?
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Hampton, for that very good speech and very good points made in that. I'd just like to pick up a couple of Councillor Lubbock's points. Councillor Lubbock, you're right to say that it's ambitious. This is a climate emergency, it is a cost of living emergency. That's why we need to be acting now. We can't afford to wait longer. You're right to say that maybe there would be support available if we look for it. That's what this motion is asking us to do. That's what I've been trying to say for months and years to the council. So I really hope that we can move on with this. But thank you, everyone, for supporting this motion. I'm really pleased to see that there is work being done on this.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. In a moment, I will ask to vote, and then I will make an announcement. We will now move to that vote. All in favour of this motion as amended? Good. Okay, unanimous. Now, we've reached the 2-hour mark, and I need to ask if any of the remaining, or should I say the remaining item, can be taken as proposed business. Does any member wish to object to it being taken? Go ahead, Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd ask if motion 7C could be deferred. I do think this is a vital issue and it needs a full and substantial debate.
Thank you very much, and we'll consider it deferred. So that brings us to the end of the meeting. Can I just thank everybody once again for coming, who could come, and once again thank all the officers, the executive directors have attended in quite en masse, and the members of Democratic Services have turned up, and the other officers. So thank you very much. I declare